How much control do we actually have? The degree of control we have over our thoughts and feelings depends largely on how intense they are. The less intense the feeling, with the typical everyday stresses, a simple relaxation technique can make us feel the calmer right away. However, the more troubling our thoughts and feelings are, the less effective our attempt at control will be. If you are terrified, no relaxation technique known to humanity will calm you. We also have more control over our thoughts and feelings when the things that we are avoiding are not too important. For example, if you are avoiding cleaning your messy garage or your car, then it's probably fairly easy to take your mind off it. Why? Because in the larger scheme on thing, it's simply not that important. If you don't do it, the sun will still rise tomorrow and you will continue to draw breath. All that will happen is that your garage or your car will remain messy, but suppose you suddenly develop a large species walking back mole on your arm and you avoid going to be the doctor. Would it be easy to take your mind off it? Sure, you could go to a movie, watch television, or surf the internet, and maybe for a little while you could stop thinking about it, but in the long term, you will inevitably start thinking about that mole because the consequences of not taking action are potentially serious. So, because many of the things we avoid are not that important, because many of our negative thoughts and feelings are not that intense, we find that our control strategies can often make us feel better, at least for a little while. Unfortunately, thoughts they can give us a false sense of confidence that is we start to believe that we have much more control than we actually do, and this false sense of control is only compounded by the myth we encountered in the last chapter. What has control got to do with the happiness trap? The happiness trap is built through ineffective control strategies. In order to feel happy, we try hard to control what we are feeling. But these control strategies have three significant costs. One, they take up a lot of time and energy and are usually ineffective in the long run. Two, we feel silly, defective, or weak-minded because the thought we are feeling we are trying to get rid of keep coming back. Three, many strategies that decrease unpleasant feeling in the short term actually lower our quality of life over the long term. These unwanted outcomes lead to more unpleasant feeling and thus even more attempt to control them. It's a vicious cycle. Psychologists have a technical term for this inappropriate or excessive use of control strategies. Experimental avoidance means the tendency to keep trying to avoid, change, or get rid of your unwanted thought and feeling, even when doing so is harmful, costly, useless, or destructive. Experimental avoidance is a major cause of depression, anxiety, drug and alcohol addictions, eating disorder, and a vast number of other physiological problems. So here is the happiness trap in a nutshell. To find happiness, we try to avoid or get rid of the bad feeling. But the harder we try, the more bad feeling we create. It's important to get the sense of this for yourself. To trust your own experience rather than simply believing what you read. So with this mind, take a moment to complete the following sentence. The thoughts and feelings I would most like to get rid of are... Once you have got your answer, take a few minutes to write a list of every single thing you have tried in order to avoid, change, or get rid of this unpleasant thoughts and feeling. Try to remember every single strategy you have ever used, whether deliberately or by fault. Don't try to edit or troubleshoot your answer. The goal is to come up with as many examples as possible, such as avoiding situations where the feeling occurs, using drug or alcohol, taking prescription medications, criticizing or castigizing yourself, going into denial, blaming others, using visualization or self-hypnosis, reading self-help books, seeing a therapist, using positive affirmation, procrastination, praying, talking it through with friends, writing in your diary, smoking cigarette, eating more, eating less, sleeping more, sleeping less, putting off important changes or decisions, throwing yourself into work, socializing, hobbies or exercise, or telling yourself it will pass. Once you have done that, go through your list and for each item ask yourself, 1. Did it get rid of my painful thoughts and feelings in the long term? 2. What did it cost me in time, energy, money, and health and vitality? 3. Did it bring me closer to a rich, full, and meaningful life? You probably discover 4 things while doing this exercise. 1. You have put a lot of time and effort into trying to change, get rid of, or escape from unpleasant thought and feeling. 2. Most of the control strategies you have tried have not lessened your painful thought and feeling in the long term. 3. Many of these control strategies have taken a toll. 4. Many of these control strategies have actually taken you farther away from the life you would ideally like to have. Feeling a bit dazed, confused, or disturbed? If so, good. This is a major shift in your reality, one that challenges many deeply entrenched beliefs. Strong reaction are quite normal. Part 2, Transforming Your Inner World, Chapter 3. The 6 core principles of ACT. Acceptance and commitment therapy is based upon 6 core principles which work together to help you achieve 2 main goals. A. To effectively handle painful thoughts and feelings. B. To create a rich, full, and meaningful life. Part 2 of this book is mainly concerned with the first of this goal, transforming your inner physiological world, and part 3 of the book is mainly concerned with the second goal, creating a life worth living. As we progress through the book, we will work to get through the 6 core principles one by one, but first let's take a brief look at all of them. Principle 1, diffusion. Diffusion means relating to your thoughts in a new way, so they have much less impact and influence over you. As you learn to diffuse painful and unpleasant thoughts, they will lose their ability to frighten, disturb, or depress you. And as you learn to diffuse unhelpful thoughts, such as self-limiting belief and harsh self-criticism, they will have much less influence over your behavior. Principle 2, expansion. Expansion means making room for unpleasant feelings, sensation, and urge instead of trying to suppress them or push them away. As you open up and make space for this feeling, you will find they bother you much less and they move on much more rapidly instead of hanging around and disturbing you. Principle 3, connections. Connections means living in the present, focusing on engaging fully in whatever you are doing instead of dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. You are deeply connected with what is happening right here, right now. Principle 4, the observing self. The observing self is a powerful aspect of human consciousness which has been largely ignored by Western psychology until now. As you learn how to assess this part of yourself, it will enable you to further transform your relationship with unwanted thoughts and feelings. Principle 5, values. Clarifying and connecting with your values is an essential step for making life meaningful. Your values are reflections of what is most important in your heart, what sort of person you want to be, what is significant and meaningful to you, and what you want to stand for in this life. Your values provide direction for your life and motivate you to make important changes. Principle 6, committed action. A rich and meaningful life is created through taking actions, but not just any action. It happens through effective actions guided by and motivated by your value, and in particular, it happens through committed actions. Actions that you take again and again and again, no matter how many times you fail or go off track. So committed action is shorthand for committed, effective, valued actions. It's important to remember that while the 6 basic principles can transform your life in many positive ways, they are not and the 10 commitments. You don't have to follow them, you can apply them if and when you choose to. So play around with them, experiment, test them out in your life and see how they work for you. And don't believe they are effective just because I say so. Give them a go and trust your own experience. I should also warn you that as you work through this book, there is one key point I will be repeating again and again. You won't change your life simply by reading or listening this book. To do that, you will have to take action. It's like reading a travel guide about India. By the end of it, you have a lot of idea about where you would like to visit, but you will still have not been there. To truly experience India, you have to make the effort to get up and get there. Similarly, if all you do is only listening this book and think about the content, and by the end you will have a lot of idea about how to create rich, full, and meaningful life. But you won't actually be living one. In order to actually live life, a better life, you will need to follow through on the exercises and the suggestions within these pages. So Are you eager to begin? Then listen on. Chapter 4: The Great Storyteller. This morning I held a fresh lemon in my hand. I ran my finger over the bright yellow skin, noting all the little dimples. I lifted it to my nose and inhaled the delicious aroma. Then I placed it on a cutting board and sliced it in half. Picking up one of the pieces, I opened my mouth and squeezed a drop of fresh lemon juice in onto the tip of my tongue. What happened as you read about the lemon? Perhaps you saw its shape and color, or maybe you felt the texture of the skin. You may have smelled the fresh lemony skin. You may even have found your mouth watering. However, where is the lemon in front of you? Only words about the lemon. You yet once those words enter your heart. You reacted to them almost as you would to a real lemon. The same thing happen when you read a great thriller. All you have in front of you are words, but once those words enter your mind, interesting things start to happen. You may see or hear the character and experience powerful emotion. When those words describe a character in a dangerous situation, you react as if someone really were in danger. Your muscles tense, your heartbeat speed up, your adrenaline rises, and yet all you are dealing with in the reality are little black marks on a page. Fascinating thing, words, but what exactly are they? Words and thoughts. Humans really heavily on words. Other animals use physical gestures and facial expression and variety of sounds to communicate, and so do we, but we are the only animal that uses words. Words are basically a complex system of symbols. So, for example, the word dog is in English referred to a certain type of animal. In French, chien refers to the same animal as does cane in Italian. The three different symbols all referring to the same thing, anything that we can sense, feel, think about, observe, imagine, or interact with can be symbolized by words like time, space, life, death, heaven, hell, people who died thousands of years ago, places that never existed, current event, and so on. And if you know what a word refers to, then you know its meaning and you can understand it. But if you don't know what a word refers to, then you don't understand it. For example, axillary hyperhidrosis is a medical term that most of us do not understand. It means sweaty armpit, and know that you know what axillary hyperhidrosis refers to. You understand the words. We use words in two different settings. In public, when we are talking, listening, or writing, and in private, when we are thinking. Words on a page, we call text. Words spoken out loud, we call speech. And words inside our head, we call thoughts. It's important to not confuse thoughts with the mental pictures or physical feeling that often accompany them. To clarify the difference, here's a little experiment. Take a few moments to think about what you are going to fix or breakfast tomorrow morning. Then as you are thinking about it, close your eyes and observe your thoughts as they happen. Notice what form they take. Close your eyes and do this for about half a minute. Okay, what did you notice? You might have noticed picture in your mind and you saw yourself cooking or eating. As on a television screen, we will call these mental pictures images. Images are not thoughts, although they often occur together. You may also have noticed feelings or sensation in your body, almost as if you were actually preparing or eating breakfast. These two are not thoughts, they are sensation. You also probably notice some words passing through your head, almost like a talking voice. Those words may have described what you intend to eat. I will have toast with peanut butter, or they may have said something like, I don't know what I will have. These words in our head are what we call thoughts, and therefore thoughts equal to words inside our heads. Images is pictures is inside our heads. Sensations is feelings inside our bodies. It's important to remember these distinctions because we deal with these internal experiences in a different way. We will focusing on images and sensation later in the book. For now, we are going to look at thoughts. Humans rely a lot on their thoughts. Thoughts tell us about our life and how to live it. They'll tell us how we are and how we should be, what to do and what to avoid, and yet they are nothing more than words, which is why in ACT we often refer to thoughts as stories. Sometimes they are true stories called fact, and sometimes they are false. But most of our thoughts are neither true nor false. Most of them are either stories about how we see life, called opinion, attitude, judgment, ideals, beliefs, theories, and morals, or about what we want to do with it, called plans, strategies, goals, wishes, and values. In a city or many trends in the thoughts is not whether it's true or false, but whether it is helpful. That is, does it help us create the life we want? The story is not the event. Imagine that a police officer catches an armed bank robber in a dramatic shootout, and the next day we read about it in the newspaper. One particular newspaper may give a totally accurate account of what happened. It may have all the facts correct, the name of the police officer, the location of the bank, maybe even the precise number of shots fired. Another newspaper may give a less accurate account of what happened. It may exaggerate some of the detail for the sake of drama or just get a fact wrong. But whether the story is totally accurate or false and misleading is still just a story. And when we read the story, we're not actually present at the event. There is no shooting actually taking place before our eyes. All we have in front of us are words. The only people who can truly experience this event are those who are present when it happens, the eyewitnesses. Only any eyewitnesses actually hears and the sounds of the shots or sees the officer tackle the robber. No matter how much detail there is in a description, the story is not the event, and vice versa. Of course, we know that newspaper stories are biased. They don't give us the absolute truth, they give us an angle on what happened which reflects the editorial viewpoint and attitude of the newspaper. And let's face it, some newspapers are far more sensationalistic than others. We also know that at any point we wish we can stop reading. If we are not getting anything useful out of the story, we can put down the newspaper and walk outside. No. This may be obvious when it comes to stories in a newspaper, but it's not nearly so obvious when it comes to the stories in our mind. All too often, we react to our thoughts as if they are the absolute truth or as we must give them all our attention. The physiological jargon for this reaction is cognitive functions. What is cognitive functions? Fusions. Cognitions is the technical term for a product of the mind, such as a thought image or memory. Fusions means a blending or melding together. Cognitive fusions means that the thought and the thing refers to the story and the event become blended. Thus, we react towards about a lemon as if a lemon is actually present. We react towards in a crime novel as if someone really is about to be murdered. We react to words like I am useless as if we actually are useless, and we react to words like I'm going to fail as if a failure is a foregone conclusion. In a set of cognitive functions, it seems as if thoughts are reality, as if what we are thinking were actually happening. Thoughts are the truth, we completely believe them. Thoughts are important, we take them seriously and give them our full attention. Thoughts are orders, we automatically obey them. Thoughts are wise, we assume they know best and we follow their advice. Thoughts can be traits, some thoughts can be deeply disturbing or frightening. Remember Michelle, who is plagued by the thoughts such as I am hopeless, I'm a lousy mother, and nobody like me. In her state of cognition fusion, those thoughts seems to be the gospel truth. As a result, she felt terrible. That's not surprising. You might think, with thoughts like that, anyone would feel upset. Certainly, that's what Michelle believed at first. But she soon discovered that she could instantly reduce the impact of such unpleasant thought by applying the simple technique described below. Read through the instructions first, then give it a go. I am having the thought that. To begin this exercise, first bring to mind an upsetting thought that takes the form I am X. For example, I am dumb, I am such a loser, I am so incompetent. Preferably pick a thought that often recurs and that usually bothers or upsets you when it does. Now, hold that thought in your mind and believe it as much as you can. Focus on it for several seconds. Notice how it affects you. Now take that thought and in front of it, insert this phrase, I am having the thought that. Now run that thought again, this time with the phrase attached. Think to yourself, I am having the thought that I am X. Notice what happened. Did you do it? Remember. You cannot learn to ride a bike just by reading about it. You actually have to get on the bike and pedal, and you won't get much out of this book if you just read the exercises. To change the way you handle your painful thoughts, you actually have to practice some of the new skills. So, if you haven't done the exercise, please go back and do it now. So what happened? You probably found that inserting the phrase I am having that thought that blah 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 instantly gave you some distance from the actual thoughts itself. It helped you step back and observe it. If you don't notice any difference, try it again and with another thoughts. You can use this technique with any unpleasant thoughts. For instance, if your mind says life sucks, then simply acknowledge I am having the thought that life sucks. If your mind says I will never get over this, then simply acknowledge I am having the thought that I will never get over this. If your mind says my mom looks huge in this, then simply acknowledge I am having the thought that my mom looks huge in this. Using this phrase makes you aware of the process of thinking. This means you are less likely to take your thoughts literally. Instead, you can step back and see the thoughts for what they are, words passing through your head and nothing more. We call this process cognitive diffusion or simply diffusion. Cognitive that thoughts are the truth and a very important. Cognitive diffusion reminds us that thoughts are just words, and instead of diffusion we recognize thoughts are merely sounds. Words, stories, or bits of language. Thoughts may or may not be true. We don't automatically believe them. Thoughts may or may not be important. We pay attention only if they are helpful. Thoughts are definitely not orders. We certainly don't have to obey them. Thoughts may or may not be wise. We don't automatically follow their advice. Thoughts are never traits. Even the most negative of thoughts is not deeply disturbing or frightening. In SCT, we have many different techniques to facilitate diffusion. Some of them may seem a bit gimmicky at first, but think of them like a training wheels on a bicycle. Once you can ride a bike, you don't need them anymore. So try out each technique as we come to it and see which works best for you. Remember, as you use the technique, the aim of diffusion is not to get rid of the thought, nor to make you like it or want it. The aim is simply to see the thought for what it really is, a string of words, and let it to be there without fighting it. The technique that follows will call on your musical abilities, but don't worry, no one will be listening but you. Musical thoughts. Bring to mind a negative self-judgment that commonly bothers you when it comes up. For example, I am such an idiot. Now hold that thought in your mind and really believe it as much as you can for about 10 seconds. Notice how it affects you. Now imagine taking the same thought and singing it to yourself to the tune of Happy Birthday. Sing it solidly inside your head and notice what happens. Now go back to the thoughts in its original form. Once again, hold it in your mind and believe it as much as you can for about 10 seconds. Notice how it affects you, and now imagine taking that thought and singing it to the tune of Jingle Bells. Sing it silently inside your head. Notice what happened. After doing this exercise, you probably found that by now you are just not taking that thought quite so seriously. You are just not buying into it as much. Notice that you haven't challenged the thought at all. You haven't tried to get rid of it, debated whether it's true or false, or tried to replace it with a positive thought. So what has happened? Basically, you have diffused it by taking the thought and putting it to the music. You have realized that it is just made up of words, like the lyric of the song. The mind is a great storyteller. The mind loves telling stories. In fact, it never stops. All day, every day, it tells you stories about who you are, what you are like, what you should be doing with your life, what other people think of you, what's wrong with the world, what will happen in the future, what went wrong in the past, and so on. It's like a radio that never stops broadcasting. Unfortunately, a lot of these stories are really negative. Stories such as I am not good enough, I am stupid, I am so fat, I hate my tights, my life is terrible, there is no hope for the future, nobody likes me, this relationship is doomed, I cannot cope, I will never be happy, and so on. There is nothing abnormal in this. As mentioned earlier, research shows that about 80% of our thoughts have some degree of negative content, but you can see how these stories, if taken as the absolute truth, you can readily fit into anxiety, depression, anger, low self-esteem, self-dependence, insecurity. Most psychological approaches regard negative stories as a major problem, make a big fuss about trying to eliminate them. Such approaches will advise you to try to make the story more accurate by checking the fact and correcting any error. Reward your story, making it more positive. Get rid of the story by repeatedly telling yourself a better one. Distract yourself from the story, push the story away, argue with the story, and debate whether it's true or not. But haven't you already tried methods like this? The reality is that the control strategy simply will not work in the long run. In ACT, the approaches are very different. Negative stories are not seen as a problem in their own right. It's only when we fuse with them, when we react as if they were in the truth and give them our full attention, that they become problematic. Since childhood, you have heard you don't believe everything you read. When they read about celebrities in the tabloid, we know that many of the stories are false or misleading. Some are exaggerated for effect, others are made up entirely. Now some celebrities take this in their stride, they accept it as a part of being famous and don't let it get to them. When they notice ridiculous stories about themselves, they just shrug it off. They certainly don't waste their time reading, analyzing, and discussing them. Other celebrities stuff get very upset about the stories. They read them and dwell on them, rant and complain and lodge a lawsuit. The view stance allows us to be like the first set of celebrities. The stories are there, but we don't take them seriously. We don't pay them much attention, and we certainly don't waste our time and energy trying to find them. In ACT, we don't try to change, avoid, or get rid of the story. We know how ineffective that is. Instead of we simply acknowledge this is a story. Naming your stories. Identify your mind's favorite stories, then give them names, such as the loser story, or the my life sucks story, or the I cannot do it story. Often there will be several variations on them. For example, the nobody likes me story may show up as I am boring, the I am undesirable story as I am fat, and the I am inadequate story as I am stupid. When your stories show up, acknowledge them by name. For example, you could say to yourself, yes, I recognize this, that old favorites, the I am a failure story, or aha, here it comes the I cannot cope story. Once you have acknowledged the story, that's it. Just let it be. You don't have to challenge it or bruise it away, nor do you have to give it much attention. Simply let it come and go as it pleases, while you can channel your energy into doing something you value. Michelle, whom we met earlier, identified three major stories: the I am worthless story, the I am bad mother story, and the I am unlovable story. Acknowledging her thoughts by this name made her far less likely to get caught up in them. But Michelle's hands-down favorite technique was musical thoughts. Whenever she caught herself buying into the I am so bad at this story, she would put the words to music and watch them lose all their power. And she didn't just stick to the happy birthday and jingle bells. Experiment with the wide varieties of tunes, from the Beethoven's Fifth Symphony to the Beatles' Penny Lane. After a week of practicing this technique repeatedly throughout the day, she found she was taking the stones a lot less seriously. Even without the music, they had not gone away, but they bothered her much less. Now you are not daydreaming with all sorts of questions, but be patient. In the next few chapters, we are going to cover the fusion in much more detail, including how to use it with the mental images. I am, in the meantime, practice using the three techniques we have covered so far. I'm having to do that, the musical thought and naming the story, of course. If you don't like a particular technique, you can leave it. And if you have a favorite, you can stick to it. Use this technique regularly with distressing thoughts, at least 10 times a day when starting. Anytime you are feeling distressed and use the press, ask yourself, what story is my mind telling me now? Then once you have identified it, diffuse it. It's important not to build up a great expectation at this point. At times the fusion occurs easily, at other times it may not happen at all. So play around with this method and notice what happened, but don't expect instant transformation. If all this seems too difficult to acknowledge, I am the tough that it's too difficult. It's okay to have the thought that it's too hard, or that this is stupid, or that it won't work. They are all just thoughts. So see them for what they are and let them be. That's all fine. You may say, but what if the thoughts are true? Good questions. Chapter 5, True Blues. In ACD, whether a thought is true is not that important. Far more important is whether it's helpful, truthful, or not. Thoughts are nothing but than words. If they are helpful words, then it's worth paying attention to them. If they are not helpful, then why bother? Suppose I'm making some serious mistake in my work and my mind tells me you are incompetent. This is not a helpful thought. It doesn't tell me what I can do to improve the situation. It just belittles me. It doesn't inspire me to improve. It's merely demoralizing. If I really am making mistakes, then putting myself down is quite pointless. Instead, what I need to do is to take action, brush up my skills, or ask for help. Or suppose I'm overweight and my mom says you are lump of lard. Just look at the belly. It's disgusting. This thought is not helpful. It does nothing but blame, disparage, and demoralize. It doesn't inspire me to eat sensibly or exercise more. It just makes me feel floozy. You can waste a lot of time trying to decide whether your thoughts are actually true. Again and again, your mind will try to suck you into the debate, but although in some instances this can be important, the vast majority of the time it is totally irrelevant. What's more, it wastes a lot of energy. The more pragmatic approaches to us is this thought helpful? Does it help me take action to create the life I want? If it is helpful, then pay attention. If it's not, then diffuse it. But I hear you ask, what if that negative thought actually is helpful? What if telling myself I am fat actually prompts me to lose some weight? Well, if a negative thought does actually motivate you, then by all means make use of it, but almost always self-critical thoughts of this nature do not motivate you to take effective action. Usually such thoughts, if taken literally, just make you feel guilty, ashamed, depressed, frustrated, or anxious, and usually people with a weight problem react to this unpleasant emotion by eating more in a futile attempt to feel better. In LCD, we place great emphasis on taking effective action to improve your quality of life. In later chapter, we will look at how to do this. For now, suffice to say, thoughts that criticize you, insult you, judge you, put you down, or blame you are likely to lower your motivation rather than to increase it. So when troublesome thoughts pop into your head, it may be useful to ask yourself one or more of the following questions. Is this thought in any way useful or helpful? Is this an old thought? Have I heard this one before? Do I gain anything useful from listening to it again? Does this thought help me take effective action to improve my life? What would I get for believing these thoughts? At this point, you may be wondering, how can you tell whether a thought is helpful or not? If you're not sure, you can ask yourself, does it help me to be the person I want to be? Does it help me to build the sort of relationship I would like? Does it help me to connect with what I truly value? Does it help me to make the most of my life as it is in this moment? Does it help me to take effective action to change my life for the better? Does it help me in the long term to create a rich, full, and meaningful life? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, then the thought is helpful. If the answer to all of them is no, then it probably not. Thoughts are just stories. In chapter 4, I discussed the concept that thoughts are basically just stories, a bunch of words strung together to tell us something. But if thoughts are just stories, then how do we know which ones to believe? There are three parts to this answer. First, be wary of holding on to any belief too tightly. We all have belief, but the more tightly we hold on to them, the more inflexible we become in our attitudes and behaviors. If you have ever tried having an argument with someone who absolutely believes they are right, then you know how pointless it is. They will never see any point of view other than their own. We describe them as being inflexible, rigid, narrow-minded, blinkered, or stuck in their ways. Also, if you reflect on your own experience, you will recognize that your beliefs change over time. That is, the belief that you once held tightly, you may now find laughable. For instance, at some point you probably used to believe in Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, or dragons, goblins, and vampires. And almost everyone changes some of their belief about religions, politics, money, family, or health at some point as they grow older. So by all means, have your belief but hold them lightly. Keep in mind that all beliefs are stories whether or not they are true. Second, if your thoughts help you to create a rich, full and meaningful life, then use it. Pay attention to it and use it for guidance and motivation, and at the same time, remember that it is still just a story, a bit of human language, so use it but don't clutch it too tightly. Third, one of the core principles of ACD involves learning to pay careful attention to what is actually happening, rather than just automatically believing what your mind says. For example, you might have heard of the imposter syndrome. This is where someone who does his job competently and effectively believes that he is just an imposter, that he doesn't really know what he is doing, the imposter thing of himself as a fraud, a fake, a charlatan, bluffing his way through everything, always on the verge of being found out. In the imposter syndrome, people are not paying enough attention to their direct experience, to the clearly observable fact that they are doing their job effectively. Instead, they are paying attention to an overcritical mind that says, you don't know what you are doing, you are screwing up. Sooner or later, everyone will see through you because you are a fake. High profile examples of people who have experienced the imposter syndrome, even while being phenomenally successful in their career, include the rock star Robbie Williams and the Oscar winning actress Renee Zellweger. In my early years as a doctor, I used to suffer from it too. If one of my patients said, "Thank you, you are a wonderful doctor," I used to think, yeah, right, you wouldn't say that if you knew what I'm really like. I could never accept such a compliment because I was convinced that deep down I was totally incompetent. In reality, I did my job very well, but my mind kept telling me I was useless and I believe it. Whenever I made a mistake at work, no matter how trivial, the words would automatically blast into my head. I am incompetent. At first, I used to take the words quite seriously. I would get really upset believing they were the absolute truth. Then I would start doubting myself and stressing out about all the decisions I would make. Had I misdiagnosed a stomach ache? Had I prescribed the wrong antibiotic? Had I overlooked something serious? Sometimes I would argue with the thought. I would point out that everyone makes mistakes, including doctors, and that none of the mistakes I made was ever serious, and that overall I did my job very well. At other times, I would run through lists of all things that I did well and remind myself of all the positive feedback I would have from my patients at work colleges. Or I would repeat positive affirmation that I was indeed highly competent, but none of that got rid of the negative thought or stopped it from bothering me. These days, the same two words still often pop up when I make mistakes, but the difference is now they don't bother me because I don't take them seriously. I know that those words are just an automatic response, like the way your eyes should whenever you sneeze. The fact is, we don't choose most of the thoughts in our head. We do choose a small number of them when we are actively planning or mentally rehearsing or being creative, but most of the thoughts in our head just show up of their own accord. We have many thousands of useless or unhelpful thoughts every day, and no matter how harsh, cruel, silly, vindictive, critical, frightening, or downright weird they may be, we cannot prevent them from popping up, but just because they appear does not mean we have to take them seriously. In my case, the I am incompetent story was there long before I became a doctor in many different aspects of my life, from learning to dance to using a computer. Any mistake I have made has triggered the same thought. I am incompetent, of course. It's not always those exact words. Often it's variant of the symptom, such as idiot or there you go screwing up again and or can't you do anything right? But these thoughts are not a problem as long as I see them for what they really are. Just a few words that pop into my head. Basically, the more tuned in you are to your direct experience of life, the more empowered you are to take your life in the direction that you truly want. In later chapter, you will learn how to develop this ability. The stories never stop. The mind never stops telling stories, not even when we are asleep. It is constantly comparing, judging, evaluating, criticizing, planning, pontificating, and fantasizing. And many of the stories it tells are real attention grabbers. Time and time again, we get lost in it. These stories, a process for which we have many different expressions. We speak of indulging a thoughts, entertaining a thoughts, striking with a thoughts, flirting with a thought, buying into a thoughts, and being wrapped up in the thoughts, lost in a thought, and being carried away by thoughts, to the name but a few. All these expressions point to how thoughts occupy our time, energy, and attention. Most of the time, we tend to take our thoughts far too seriously and give them far too much attention. The following exercise demonstrates the difference between attaching importance to a thought and not taking a thought seriously. Not taking a thought seriously. Bring to mind a thought that normally upsets you, that takes the form I am X, for example, I am inadequate. Hold that thought in your mind and notice how it affects you. Now bring to mind the thought I am a banana. Hold it in your mind and notice how it affects you. What did you notice? Most people find that the first thought bothers them, but the second thought makes them grin. Why? Because you don't take that second thought seriously, but if the words following I am are a loser, I am a failure, I am a fat pig, or I am a boring person instead of a banana, we tend to attach far more importance to them, and yet they are all just words. One simple way of taking your thoughts less seriously is to try it. Thanking your mind. This is a simple and effective diffusion technique. When your mind starts coming up with the same old stories, simply thank it. You could say to yourself silently things like, thank you, mind, how very informative you are, or thanks for sharing, or is that right, how fascinating, or simply thanks, mind. When thanking your mind, you don't do it sarcastically or aggressively. Do it with a warmth and humor and with a genuine appreciation for the amazing ability to your mind to produce a never-ending stream of thoughts. Yeah, you could also combine this technique with naming the story as the I am a failure story. Thank you so much, mind. Below is another technique that will help you take your thoughts less seriously. Read through the instructions first and then give it a go. The silly voice technique. This technique is particularly good with a recurrent negative self-judgment. Find a thought that upsets or bothers you. Focus on the thought for 10 seconds, believing it as much as possible. Notice how it affects you. Then pick an animated cartoon character with a humorous voice, such as Mickey Mouse, Bugs Bunny, Shrek, or Homer Simpson. Now bring the troubling thoughts to mind, but hear it in a cartoon character voice, as if that character were speaking to your thoughts out loud, and notice what happened. Now get the negative topic in its original form, and again believe it as much as possible. Notice how it affects you. Next, pick a different cartoon character or a character from a movie or television show. Consider fantasy characters such as Darth Vader, Yoda, Gollum, or someone from your favorite sitcom or actor with distinctive voice, such as Arnold Schwarzenegger or Eddie Murphy. Once again, bring the distressing thought to mind and hear it in that voice. Notice what happened. After doing this exercise and then repeating it, you have probably found that you are not taking the negative thought quite so seriously. You may even have found yourself grinning or chuckling. Notice that you haven't tried to change the thoughts, get rid of it, argue with it, push it away, debate whether it's true or false, replace it with a more positive thought, or distract yourself from it in any way. You have merely seen it for what it is, a bit of language. By talking that segment of language and hearing it in a different voice, you become aware of it, that it is nothing more than a string of words, and thus it loses in its impact. A client of mine, we'll call her Jana, who suffered from depression, found this method extremely helpful. She had grown up with a verbally abusive mother who constantly criticized and insulted her. The insult that had once come from her mother and had now turned into recurring negative thoughts. You are fat, you are ugly, you are stupid, you will never amount to anything, nobody likes you. When these thoughts come to mind during our session, Jenna would often start crying. She had spent many years in therapy trying to get rid of these thoughts, all to no avail. Jenna was an avid fan of the comedy troupe Monty Python, and the character she picked was from the film The Life of Brian. In the film, Brian's mother, played the male actor Terry Jones, is always criticizing Brian in a ridiculously high-pitched, screeching voice. When Jenna heard her negative thought in the voice of Brian's mother, she couldn't take them seriously. The thought didn't immediately disappear, but they quickly lost their power over her, and this contributed significantly to lifting her depression. But what if a thought is both true and serious? For instance, if you are dying from cancer and have the thought, I will be a dead soon. From an anxiety perspective, we are far more interested in whether a thought is helpful than whether it's true or false, serious or ridiculous, negative or positive, optimistic or pessimistic. The bottom line is always the same. Does this talk help you make the most out of life now? If you only have a few months to live, it's really important to reflect on how you want to spend them. What loose end do you need to tie up? What do you want to do? And whom do you want to see before you die? So a thought like, I will be dead soon could be helpful if it motivates you to reflect and take effective action. And that's the case. You won't try to diffuse such a thought, you will pay attention to it and use it to help you do what you need to do. But suppose that thought becomes an obsession and you keep playing it over and over in your head. Would it be helpful to spend your last week of life thinking all day long, I will be dead soon, giving all your attention to that thought instead of the loved one around you? Now, for some people, the silly voice technique may seem inappropriate for a thought like this because it might seem to be trivializing something quite serious. If that's how it feels to you, don't use it. But it's important to know that diffusion is not about trivializing or making fun of genuine problem in your life. Diffusion is aimed at freeing us from operations by our mind, freeing up our time, energy, and attention so we can invest it in meaningful activity rather than dwelling uselessly on our thoughts. So, if I will be dead soon, keep showing up and taking up all your attention, this preventing you from connecting with your loved one. Then you could diffuse it in a number of different ways. You could acknowledge, aha, here is the imminent death. Sorry, or I'm having the thought that I will be dead soon. Or you could simply say, thanks, mine. And don't think you are going to have to spend the rest of your life thinking your mind or hearing your thoughts in digits and silly voice. This method are merely stepping stones. Don't the line you can expect to diffuse your thoughts instantly without the need for such contrived technique. When practicing diffusion, it's important to keep the following thing in mind. The aim of diffusion is not to get rid of unpleasant thoughts, but rather to see them for what they are, just words, and to let go of the struggling with them. At times they will go away, at the times they won't. If you start expecting them to go, you are setting yourself up for disappointment or frustration. Do not expect this technique to make you feel good. Often when you diffuse a troublesome thought, you will feel better, but this is just a beneficial byproduct, not the main goal. The main goal of diffusion is to free you from the tyranny of your mind, so you can focus your attention on the more important things. So when diffusion does make you feel better, by all means enjoy it, but don't expect it to, and don't start using it to try to control how you feel. Otherwise, you are stuck right back in the happiness trap. Remember that you are human, so there will be plenty of times when you forget to use these new skills. And that's okay, because the moment you realize you have been reeled in by unhelpful thoughts, you can instantly use one of these techniques to unhook yourself. Remember that no technique is foolproof. There may be times when you try them and diffusion does not happen. If so, simply observe what it's like to be fused with your thoughts. Merely learning to tell the difference between fusion and diffusion is useful in its own right. Diffusion is like any other skill. The more you practice, the better you get. So either thinking your mind and silly voice technique to your repertoire and aim to use them between 5 and 10 times each day. At this point, don't expect any dramatic changes in your life. Simply notice what happens as you incorporate this practice into your daily routine. And if you are having any doubt or concern, make a note of them. In the next chapter, we will look at the common problem people have with diffusion, and more importantly, we will learn how to overcome them. Chapter 6: Troubleshooting Diffusion. Diffusion does not work, snapped John. What do you mean? I asked. Well, I had to give this presentation at work in front of about 50 people. My mind kept telling me I was going to screw up and make a fool of myself, so I tried to use diffusion technique, but they did nothing. You mean you keep buying into the story that you would screw up? No, it helped with that. I stopped taking it seriously. Then why do you say diffusion does not work? Because I still felt anxious. John, I have been giving talk in public for over 20 years, and I still feel anxious every time I get up there. I have met hundreds of people who speak to audience as part of their professions, and I have always asked them, do you get anxious when you give a talk? So far, almost every single person has said yes. The point is, if you are going to put yourself in any sort of challenging situation, if you are going to take any significant risk, then anxiety is a normal emotion. It will be there, and if you see negative thought, is not going to get rid of it. Many of us, when we first encounter fusion, fall into the same trap as John. We start trying to use the fusion as control strategy. Remember, a control strategy is any attempt to change, avoid, to get rid of unwanted thought and feeling. Control strategies are problematic when they are used excessively or in situations where they cannot work, and when using them reduces our quality of life in the long term. The fusion is the very opposite of a control strategy. It's an acceptance strategy. In essence, rather than attempting to change, avoid, to get rid of an unpleasant thought and feeling, our aim is to accept them. Acceptance does not mean you have to like your uncomfortable thought and feeling. It just means you stop struggling with them. When you stop wasting your energy on trying to change, avoid, to get rid of them, you can put that energy into something more useful instead. This is best explained with an analogy. Imagine you live in a small country that shares a border with a hostile neighbor. There is a long-standing tension between the two countries. The neighboring country has a different religion and a different political system, and your country sees it as a major threat. There are three possible scenarios for how your country can relate to its neighbor. The worst-case scenario is war. Your country attacks and the other one retaliates. As both countries get pulled into a major war, the people of both nations suffer of any major war and the huge costs involved in the term of life, money, and well-being. Another scenario, better than the first but still far from satisfactory, is a temporary truce. Both countries agreed to ceasefire, but there is no reconciliation. Resentment sits beneath the surface, and there is the constant underlying threat that war will break out again. Think of India and Pakistan with the constant threat of nuclear war and the intense hostility between Hindus and Muslims. The third possibility is genuine peace. You acknowledge your differences and allow them just to be. This doesn't get rid of the other country, nor does it mean that you necessarily like it or even want it there, nor does it mean that you approve of its politics or religions, because you are no longer at war. You can now use your money and resources to build up the infrastructure of your own country instead of squandering them on the battlefield. The first scenario, war, is like the struggle to get rid of unwanted thoughts and feeling as a battle that can never be won, and it consumes a huge amount of time and energy. The second scenario, a truce, is infinitely better, but is still a long way from true acceptance. Is more like a grudging tolerance. There is no sense of moving forward to a new future, although there is no active warfare. A hostility remains, and you are resigned to the ongoing tension. A grudging tolerance of thought and feeling is better than an outright struggle, but it leaves you feeling stuck and somewhat helpless. It's a sense more of resignation than acceptance, of entrapment rather than freedom, of being stuck rather than moving forward. The third scenario, peace, represents true acceptance. Notice that in this scenario, your country does not have to like the other country. A proof of its being there, comfort to its religion, to learn to speak its language. You simply make peace with them. You acknowledge your differences. You give up trying to change their political religion, and you focus your effort on making your own country a better place to live in. It's the same when you truly accept your uncomfortable thoughts and feelings. You don't have to like them, but want them to or approve them. You simply make peace with them and let them be. This leaves you free to focus your energy on taking action that move your life forward in a direction you value. The true meaning of acceptance. Acceptance does not mean putting up with or resigning yourself to anything. Acceptance is about embracing life, not merely tolerating it. Acceptance literally means taking what is offered. It doesn't mean giving up or admitting defeat. It doesn't mean just gritting your teeth and bearing it. It means fully opening yourself to your present reality, acknowledging how it is, right here and now, and letting go of struggle with life as it is in this moment. But what if you want to improve your life and not just accept it as it is? Well, That's the whole purpose of this book. But the most effective way to make changes in your life is to start by fully accepting it. Suppose you are walking across ice. In order to safely take the next step, you first need to find a firm foothold. If you try moving forward without doing that, then you are likely to fall flat on your face. Acceptance is like finding that firm foothold. It's a realistic appraisal of where your feet are and what condition the ground is in. It doesn't mean that you like being in that spot or that you intend to stay there. Once you have a firm foothold, you can take the next step more effectively. The more fully you accept the reality of your situation as it is, here and now, the more effectively you can take action to change it. The Dalai Lama exemplifies this beautifully. He fully accepts that China has invaded Tibet and that he is forced to live in exile from his own country. He doesn't waste time, energy, wishful thinking, getting outreach, or dwelling morosely on what he has lost. He knows what that won't help, nor does he admit defeat of throw the whole issue into the too hard basket. Instead, he acknowledges that right now this is the way it is, and at the same time he does everything in his power to help. He actively campaigned all around the world, increase public and political awareness of Tibet's predicament, and to raise financial support for its people. Another example, let's consider the case of domestic violence. If your partner is physically violent, the first step is to accept the reality of the situation, that you are in danger and you need to take action to protect yourself. The next step is to take actions. Get some professional help, take legal actions, and leave the relationship. In order to take these actions, you will need to accept the anxiety, guilt, other painful thoughts and feelings that are likely to rise. So this is what ACT is all about. Acceptance and action side by side. The core philosophy of ACT is neatly encapsulated in the Serenity Challenge. Develop the courage to solve this problem that can be solved, the serenity to accept those problems that cannot be solved, and the wisdom to know the difference. If your life is not working for you, the only sensible thing is to take action to change it. The action will be far more effective when you start from a place of acceptance. All the time and energy that you waste on struggling with thoughts and feelings could be far more useful invested in taking action, the right actions. A rich, full, and meaningful life comes about through accepting your thoughts and feelings instead of fighting them, and taking effective action guided by your deepest value. So, what are the causes of non-acceptance? What happens in the long run? When you try to avoid or get rid of unpleasant thoughts and feelings, do your control strategies work? Are they giving you the life you want? Acceptance is a powerful alternative to control. You have already discovered that many unpleasant thoughts are far less painful when diffused, and in later chapter you will discover similar transformation with negative feeling. How to use diffusion? Now let's return to John's comment that diffusion does not work. John was trying to use diffusion to get rid of his anxiety. No wonder it didn't work. Diffusion is not some clever way to control your feeling. It's simply an acceptance technique. True, diffusion and helpful talk will often reduce feeling of anxiety, but that's just a beneficial byproduct, a bonus. It's not the main thing. If you try to use diffusion to control anxiety or any unpleasant feeling, for that matter, sooner or later you will end up frustrated. But what if you have diffused a thought and it's still there? Again, diffusion is not about getting rid of thoughts, it's about seeing them for what they really are and making peace with them. Allowing them to be there without fighting them. Sometimes they will go away with a very little fuse, other time they will hang around for quite a while, and sometimes they will go away and then come back again. The point is, once you allow them to be there without that struggle, you can put your energy and attention into activity you value. But if you expect that diffusing your thoughts will make them go away, you are setting yourself up for disappointment. You are falling back into the agenda of control, the happiness trap. The aim is to accept your thoughts, not to get rid of them. And remember, you don't have to like that thoughts in order to accept it. You can accept it purely out of pragmatism. The thought is always there, whether you like it or not, and struggling with it just takes up your time and energy without any long-term benefit. Acceptance frees up your energy for life-enhancing activity. It's okay to want to get rid of an unpleasant thoughts. In fact, it's expected, given that that's what you have been trying to do your whole life. But wanting to get rid of something is quite different from actively struggling with it. For example, supposedly, You have an old car that you no longer want, and suppose you won't have an opportunity to sell it for at least another month. You can want to get rid of the car and simultaneously accept that you still have the car. You don't have to try to smash the car up, make yourself miserably, or get drunk every night just because you still have the old car. So, if you do find yourself struggling with a negative thought, just notice it. Pretend that you are a scientist observing your own mind. Notice the different way in which you struggle. Do you challenge your thoughts, trying to disprove or invalidate them? Do you judge them as they good or bad, true or false, positive or negative? Do you try to push them away or replace them with the better ones? Do you enter into a debate with your mind? Observe your struggle with interest and notice what it accomplishes. Of course, some stories are more persistent than others. They come back again and again. Remember my I am incompetent story that I have had a story for as long as I can remember. It visits me much more less often now, but it still pops into my mind from time to time. The difference is now I don't believe it, but a helpful thoughts show up like I just stuffed up. How can I learn from this? It's important to let go of any expectation that your story will go away or show up less frequently as it happened. Very often they will go away. But if you are diffusing them to make them go away, then by definition you are not truly accepting them. And you know where that leads. But I hear you ask, are not positive thoughts better than negative thoughts? Not necessarily. Remember, the most important question is this thought helpful? Suppose an alcoholic brain surgeon thinks to himself, hey, I am the greatest brain surgeon in the world. I can do brilliant surgery even if I have been drinking. It's a positive thought, but certainly not a helpful one. Yeah, most people convicted of drunk driving have had a positive thought of a similar nature. The same applies to neutral thought. In this book, I mostly talk about negative thoughts simply because they are the ones we most often have problem with. But anything that applies to negative thought also applies to neutral and positive thought. The bottom line is not whether a thought is positive or negative, true or false, pleasant or unpleasant, optimistic or pessimistic, but whether it helps to create a fulfilling life. So, should you believe any of your thoughts? Yes, but only if they are helpful and hold those beliefs likely. And even while you are holding them, know that they are nothing more than language. As time goes on and you work through the rest of this book, you will learn to diffuse unhelpful thoughts quickly and easily. But it's important to remember, cognitive functions is not the enemy. Making plan for the future, brainstorming solution for your problem, then mentally rehearsing your actions, getting lost in a book, engaging in a conversation, reading music, writing a letter, telling someone you love them. All this activity involves cognitive fusion, so cognitive fusion is not the enemy. It's an essential part of being human. Negative thoughts are not the enemy either because of the way our mind have evolved, many of our thoughts are negative to some extent. So if you consider them to be the enemy, you are always going to be battling with yourself. Thoughts are merely sounds, words, symbol, or bits of language. So why declare war on them? Our aim here is to increase our self-awareness, to recognize when we are fusing with our thoughts, and to catch ourselves when it happens. Once we have the awareness, we then have a much greater choice as to how we act. If thoughts are helpful, make use of them. If they are unhelpful, then diffuse them. Keep in mind that the diffusion technique we have conferred so far are like those inflatable armbands young children use in a swimming pool. Once you can swim, you don't need them anymore. The idea is that later on, as you incorporate the other idea within this book, you can diffuse your thoughts without giving them too much attention. You can be truly engaged in your work, a conversation, or any other meaningful activity, and when unhelpful thoughts pop into your head, you can instantly see it for what it is and let it come and go without it distracting you. This will be much clearer after the next chapter, in which we explore an immensely powerful aspect of human consciousness, our research within us that has been so overlooked by Western society that there is not even a common word for it in the English language. Chapter 7. Look who is talking. Have you ever noticed some strange or disturbing thought pop into your head and own wonder, where did that come from? Have you ever been chided for not paying attention and said, sorry, I was somewhere else? Do you ever suddenly realize that your mind has wandered? If we look more closely at this expression, we can see that they point to something rather they're curious. Where did that thought come from and where did it go? And if you were somewhere else, then where were you? And how did you get back from there? I see the answer to these questions by teaching you to recognize the different part of your life, yourself, the thinking self and the observing self. The thinking self is the part of you that thinks, plans, judges, compares, creates, imagines, visualizes, analyzes, remembers, and daydream and fantasizes. A more common name for it is the mind. Popular physiological approaches such as positive thinking, cognitive therapy, creative visualization, hypnosis, and neuro-linguistic programming all focus on controlling the way your thinking self operates. This is all great in theory and it appeals to our common sense, but as we have seen, the thinking self is just not that easy to control. The observing self is fundamentally different from the thinking self. The observing self does not think. It is the part of you that is responsible for focus, attention, and awareness. While it can observe or pay attention to your thoughts, it cannot produce them. Whereas the thinking self thinks about your experience, the observing self registers your experience directly.